Yes, that's right. We'll have Mark Reddings on the drum soon, playing a solo to this song. That's the Southern River Band, the boys out of Thornley. They'll be doing great things for a long period of time. Just like Mark Reddings, Will Schofield here on the Shelter FootyCast. How are you, Skeeter?
Going very well, Scully. Grand final week. Everything up until about this morning was about Geelong, about Sydney, about injuries to Max Holmes, about Sam Reid. And have to say, as we woke up this morning, the football world turned on its head. And as John Lennon once famously sang, nobody told me there'd be days like these. Strange days indeed.
Thank you very much, John Lennon. Shelter FootyCast here. We do a bit of a preview, review Monday and Thursday. We do it twice a week, West Australian theme, all thanks to Shelter. They're doing beautiful things down at Busselton, big bad jetty down there. You can find us on socials, Shelter FootyCast on Instagram, FootyCast at shelterbrewing.com.au is the email. You can watch us on YouTube, listen to us as a podcast. Shelter, born and brewed in Busselton, WA. Let's get straight into a big moment of the round. It's grand final week, as you said. We're going to get right through a big grand final preview, a little bit of West Coast and Freo stuff. But I think before we get into it, we'll start with this and then get right into the grand final stuff. Huge explosive allegations this morning coming out about Hawthorn, and during a period of real success for them. Chris Fagan involved, Alistair Clarkson involved. You would have spoken about this on Sports Day. I see these allegations, and wherever this sort of takes us, right, wrong, truth, wherever it is at the moment, they're just, I guess, allegations. But I think this may be the biggest footy story in 2 decades. A bit bigger than Supplement Saga, probably bigger than the West Coast 06 era. The stuff that was going on there. What other big stories has there been? I think this could be, we could look back at this in a few months' time and say it's the biggest story in footy in the last 20 years.
Yeah, well, from the players' perspective that have put this out there, and through the Hawthorn inquiry, so to speak, that has come up with these allegations, let's just say if they are proven true, then that is horrific. It's not in keeping with where we're trying to go to as a society, let alone in the AFL. So let's put that to one side. On the counterclaim is these allegations, so we have to be very mindful of not convicting those that are having these charges or the finger pointed at them. And obviously we're talking Chris Fagan, Alistair Clarkson. I think we have to be very mindful of letting due process, because both men, particularly Clarkson, has made a statement late today saying that he denies the allegations, very hurt by them, he's shocked, he's stunned, and there has been no process that he's been involved with. So I think we're not trying to sit on the fence with this. It's just a very difficult story to try and unpack.
Well, yeah, it's interesting. I've been thinking about it all day. It's been on my mind for most minutes of the day. Being sort of new into media, you've been doing this for a long time. There's some things that come about. We can talk about most things, right? We've done this for a fairly long time on this show. You can talk about most things, but this in particular, for me personally, is a minefield, and not because I'm trying to tiptoe around any issues. There's a lot to unpack in it. There's allegations around Indigenous exclusion, family relationship, plus current AFL coaches included, club culture. There is so much there, and to be quite honest, I don't understand all of it. Something you can just speak about and, okay, let's have an opinion on it. But this one in particular, it's really difficult to have an opinion because I've just seen it this morning. It's clearly been like a wildfire through the media, and everyone wants to have an opinion on it. But I find it really, really difficult, especially as a player that's been in. I've been on under coaches, in general, and not going to hide. I've been at West Coast my whole career, so any sort of chats that I have about what I've seen and what I've experienced, they're very, I guess, relevant to some sense, but absolutely irrelevant in another sense, because I've never been in any other club. I've never seen. Some guy, we've seen Luke Hodge and Sean Burgoyne come out today and speak of not knowing about any of this. So how the hell would I know what's going on? And how the hell would you know what's going on?
No, exactly. And I guess in your situation, you've got the benefit of having been in a footy club and maybe obviously having had relationships with Indigenous players and know what makes them tick better than, say, myself or some others.
Yep.
And you've quite openly said, look, I don't see someone as Indigenous and non-Indigenous. They're your teammates, they're your mates, full stop. That being said, though, at footy clubs, would people at footy clubs look at what's come out today and be stunned? Are there other stories like this? Can't be just Hawthorn that this has happened over the past 20, 30 years.
I will say, like, the extremes of what was quoted in some of the storytelling, like it was shocking. Like, there's some real extremes in there, and I won't touch on them. But I guess in my experience, clubs do deal with relationship problems. They do deal with behavioural problems. They do deal with your application as a footballer, because that's what you're employed as, right? So if you rock up and you're unfit, or you rock up and you're not focused, or you're depressed, or suicidal. Like, I've played with guys that are suicidal. We spoke to Lewis Jetta on BackChat about his suicidal depression. He's been really open with it, and he's an Indigenous guy, so somewhat relevant, right? So I've seen all that, and clubs do get involved. Yes, they do. Absolutely. West Coast, we're involved with numerous players, both Indigenous and non-Indigenous players, because at the end of the day, their welfare is their responsibility. So what's happened to Hawthorn, how they've gone about that, I have no idea. But I've certainly seen intervention from a football club, absolutely.
Yeah, and also you're talking about whether it's relationships, with a player and his partner, or a player in the wrong crowd. And so, it's... Clubs have a vested interest, and I suppose it's the methodology of how they go about that. The wording of this, or the way this has been portrayed, seems extremely raw and brutal in that sense.
Look, race and inclusion and respect, and where it all falls into that. You and I, Skate, the way we've grown up, we don't know what it's like to grow up as an Indigenous person in this country.
Exactly.
And so that's probably back on the start of this conversation. It's really difficult for us to have an opinion on it, because what do we really know?
Well, we can empathise, but we can't understand. It's like I can't understand some of your journey in life until I go through it, and vice versa. So absolutely, we're just having a look at it from the outside, and the investigation will play out.
Fagan stood down as Brisbane coach.
Absence to leave, yep.
Clarkson has delayed his start as North Melbourne. I think, like, on those two, and with the allegations involved, I don't think it'd be that far out of line to say I would be surprised to a point if Clarkson and Fagan are coaching next year.
Irrespective of the result of the investigation?
Yeah. Well, I know that's difficult, but this is where we are as a,
But that's sad, though. If you're saying if two coaches, if they are proven innocent, lose their job.
Yeah.
If they are proven guilty, I have no issue with what punishment comes their way, like any individual. But
it's
you're saying the mud sticks.
And clubs are brands, and
I disagree with that process, but you're probably right, given the heat that's going to come from it. But
we'll follow it along. It's happened today, so
it could take weeks. Could take a couple of months.
I would say it should take probably longer than weeks. So we may not know, but we'll be here talking to it probably about in a few months' time. From the top, I think it'll be one of the biggest stories that we've seen in football. Full stop. So we'll continue to follow it, I think, Skate. That's it. Big news. Let's get into grand final week, though. Like you said, it's a terrific week in footy, grand final week, and I think we can probably separate these two issues just for a moment. Serious allegations, but grand final week, grand final preview to get to. I think we can get stuck into it. Will Schofield, Mark Reddings, Shelter FootyCast. Before we get there, West Coast Freo update. There's been a few sort of permutations across the waters. So since we last spoke, Darcy Tucker has requested a trade to North. Lloyd Meek requested a trade to Hawthorn. I didn't know that it happened. That happened today. So my social media feed. Well, absolutely.
I knew Hawks were into him, but if that's a development, then that's
because Trevor Nisbet was in the paper a couple of days ago saying they were into him. So
but by the same token, when's the last time Fremantle and West Coast went to dinner?
Yep, very good. And if it was, I don't know where they're heading out. Are they going to Macca's or are they going to Nobu?
They're going not to Nobu. They don't. There's no holding hands between those two clubs. Never has been.
Joel Weston, Connor Blakely delisted. And on West Coast side of things, Jacko Nelson, Hugh Dixon, and Tom Joyce all delisted at the West Coast.
No huge surprise at West Coast. One quick one, obviously with Griffin Logue requesting to go to North Melbourne. So to Darcy
We're
Tucker.
going to touch on the question you're about to ask.
I'm just putting out that that's going to be a fascinating scenario.
I've got a nice little PTI at the end for you, Skeeter. I do, rather than skim over the West Coast stuff, Dixon enjoys their additional ads. But Jacko Nelson...
102 games.
Yeah, played over 100. He's 25 years old. I still think he's proven he can play at the level. I mean, Andy Brayshaw probably goes and wins the Brownlow without Jacko Nelson playing him in 2 derbies this year. So he's been a stopper. He's been a running half-back flanker. West Coast has notoriously had a very good backline. I don't think that can be argued for a decent amount of time.
So what is he, a stopper?
It was the emergency in 2018 for the premiership. So I just would be very surprised if he's not in a side's best 18 around the country. He might not be in West Coast, and they've been a shocking side this year, haven't they? But I just... Yeah, it goes in line with the Freo ones. Moving on role players, I'm never a big fan of, but every club does it. So
well, he's played 100 games. So the question I ask, and I think I know the answer here, is he a good citizen to have at a footy club?
Absolutely.
Well, that ticks a couple of boxes already.
Really good kid. He's from a relatively big family with brothers and sisters. He acts like the conduit between young guys and old guys at the footy club. Now he's sort of, not that he was a protege of mine, but I was really close to him. He's a Geelong boy, so I'm sad to see him go. I'm probably a little bit biased, but he's been a really good servant of that football club, and I'd like to see him continue his career elsewhere. Freo, they have some sort of exodus going on here. I don't know. They're band of role players all out the door. It just worries me for future success for Freo. That's all. That's all.
And Luke Jackson arrived in Perth yesterday, just for what it's worth. So he was very non-committal as to what he's doing, but given he's following all the Fremantle players on Instagram now, so I'm told.
Who told you that?
Well, I've just, you think that I'm a complete numbskull. I do actually have a phone. I look through and I see people posting stuff that relates to Luke Jackson.
You just said, so I'm told. So I just said, who told you?
Well, I saw it on social media. I saw it on Twitter. You actually think that I live under a rock and have no idea about social media, Sky, but I have some ability. It's limited.
I know you don't live under a rock, but you do have limited social media experience. All right, let's get in the grand final preview. Will Schofield, Mark Reddings, Shelter FootyCast. Now, I bloody hope this is right. Geelong v Sydney, Saturday, September 24 at the MCG.
On the money.
Very good. I'm looking forward to this one. I think after all said and done, I think the two best teams have made the grand final. I know Brisbane was good at stages. I know Melbourne was good at stages. I know Collingwood was...
Collingwood was, given what they'd won, 14 of the past 15 games, but the one team that had beaten them in that little spell, or long spell, was Sydney. Yeah,
correct. And they beat them in a prelim. I know it was close, but they've beaten them. So they're the better side. And I think the two best sides, over probably a decade here, right? 2011, Geelong's last premiership. 2012, Sydney's last premiership. They've got some experience. Both have experience, but both have good youngsters. And people didn't think that about Geelong at the start of this year. I was one of them.
Absolutely.
Where was their youth going to come from?
No, but Chris Scott, in 2011, some say he might have been handed a team from Bomber, Thompson, but even though he's had some trials, tribulations, some setbacks, some heartache, particularly prelim final last year, they've always been around the mark, which I think you have to give Geelong a lot of credit for. So to get them from 2011 to 2022, if he is to get that second premiership, that puts him from being a very good coach. I think dual premierships that far apart, exceptional. As for...
Is Horse the same? Like he's only won one flag?
No, absolutely. And again, going back to them in 2012... Yep. Grand final, that was a beauty. I mean, Nick Malcheski kicks the winner late in the game. Early in the game, you got Lewis Cheddar v Cyril Rioli.
That's right.
Buddy's playing for Hawthorn back then.
Yep.
Mitch Morton, a WA kid, gets a game.
He almost won the Norm Smith Morton, didn't he?
He kicked a couple of goals, 2 in 3 minutes, essentially. So we spoke to him tonight as well. So,
did you?
Yeah.
Unreal.
And so he was a bit of a journeyman, Richmond, etc. So that 2012 grand final was memorable for Sydney. You're right. They have been thereabouts as well, beaten by the Bulldogs in 2016. So always contending and thereabouts. So, but guess what? Despite all of the great numbers we've said about these two teams in the past decade and how good they've been for a long time, they've never met in a grand final. Geelong, South Melbourne, or the Sydney Swans.
That's astonishing for Mike, given they were both around when this competition started.
Yeah.
So it starts this week, grand final week. The players will have... way more. The biggest thing you know about grand final week is a lot of people rock up at training. Usually there's about 20, 30 people down there.
The usual suspects.
Now the stands are full. And it's a pretty cool feeling. at training. Like you just don't have it at all. It's so different to the rest of the year that you've just got such a huge crowd. So they'll know that. I remember we used to do everyone would come to the middle for a fake meeting. You would go out and sign some signatures, and then Simo would blow a whistle, and we'd come back into the middle for another fake meeting and walk off together. So blokes weren't out there signing for an hour. Because there'd be 20,000 people and everyone wants a signature.
Oh, so essentially what you're doing, you're ripping off the fans for some love. You just couldn't be bothered putting that extra time in?
I didn't see you hanging around signing signatures out there, Skeeter. Imagine that. Skeeter at the back signing it. So, yeah?
Well, mate, I think I'd put the time in because kids remember that sort of moment.
Okay.
Will?
Oh, perfect. Shall I back up? I feel like an arsehole now. Skeeter.
Only kidding.
Yeah, so we did do that. Okay, there we go. There's a little trick off the bat. We then get to Melbourne and we get the grand final parade. So this year it's a hybrid parade. There's been a lot of talk about the Yarra and how the Yarra River and they'll be on floats. That is happening, but they're also on cars. I spoke to Tom Hickey during the week. He said it's a hybrid. It's a hybrid parade. Bit of cars, bit of boat action. Don't know how I feel about the boat action, but that's what's going on.
Sounds a bit like trains, planes, and automobiles. Yeah, I don't know, John Candy. I don't know if there's something happening there, but look, I would have thought just jump in the car. Like, what's wrong with tradition and just doing and guess what? On Friday, Melbourne. Raining, so that's the forecast. Oh yeah, so it's going to be Shizen. It's going to be pretty average weather. So they're going to be sitting on the back of a boat on the Yarra. I think going through South Bank. I don't know.
There's a couple of little superstitions, little omens to look forward on Friday. So Sunnies, who's wearing the most sunglasses in the parade?
What does that mean?
Well, it started in 95, 96 when the Sydney North Melbourne Grand Final. What was that? 96.
96.
North Melbourne, Pagan said no one's to wear sunglasses. I want you looking at the fans. I want you being humble. I want you, not hiding away. And Sydney rocked up all in sunnies. And Pagan pulled them all in and said, have a look at these blokes. They think they're fucking rock stars. They think they've already won. And Kangaroos go on to win. Don't shake your head.
It's a bit of a long boat of draw, isn't it?
Yeah,
I'm just saying. It's
absolutely. But then through some of the North Melbourne connections with Clarkson, with Adam Simpson.
That tradition continued.
And we spoke to Jared Ruffhead, and he said in 2015, when we rocked up for the parade, all the West Coast blokes, Sunny's on, and he said, look at these blokes, we've got them, and they end up beating us in 2015. Adam Simpson not only played in 1996 with Pagan, under Pagan, he was at Hawthorn before that, so he knew the sunglasses rule, yet didn't tell us about it in 2015, and we go on and lose. 2018 comes around.
Yeah.
Ban by Simpson, no sunglasses in the parade. Collingwood rock up, all got sunnies on. We win the parade. So just watch for who has sunglasses on, especially if it's raining, Mark Reddings. There's no reason to have sunglasses on if it's raining.
There you get tool of the week if you're wearing them in the rain.
And the other one is the captain to take the Premiership Cup. They present it to the crowd at the end of the parade. The last captain to take his hand off, that team will win. So it's but everyone knows about this. Both teams know about it. The captains know who holds on to the longest.
Well, so if both teams know about this, you're going to have
someone always breaks. Someone always breaks. Someone always breaks. So I'm just telling you, Skate. Hey, you don't have to question it. Just watch for it.
Okay. No, I just find it fascinating that you've resorted to like a sort of like a gypsy, the crystal balls out, and that's how you're doing. You
spoke to Mason Cox on BackChat. He said Collingwood knew about it with Pendlebury and Hearn in 18, and Pendlebury broke first because all of us knew about it and were watching it.
Well, so why did he break first?
Because, mate, you have to. Someone has to. That's the point. Someone has to, and you watch to who it is, and then the other team will win.
Okay. No, I'll keep that in mind.
Stay with me. Your wallet might look a little bit better if you listen to me. Cameron Ling will present the trophy if Geelong win it. Paul Kelly will present it for Sydney. That's pretty cool.
Pretty cool. He's an absolute suit. Both of them. Imagine those two blokes in their prime. They were just guns. And Lingy, of course, he knows about success. And Paul Kelly, arguably top 5 in Sydney's history.
Nathan Buckley to present the Norm Smith medal. Comfortable with that?
Yeah, no problems at all.
Very good. He wouldn't have done it if Collingwood were playing, surely.
No, probably not. Bucks didn't win a premiership, of course.
No. Did he win a Norm Smith in a losing?
Yes, he did against the Brisbane Lions. I'm pretty sure he did. Yeah.
Yes,
and he sort of quite famously didn't throw it away, but he was
took it off.
Yep, exactly.
Umpires, Matty Stevic, who's umpired his 450th game, I believe.
450th, yeah, and also this is his 9th grand final in a row. His 10th grand final, full stop. His 9th grand final.
So then he got dropped after the first.
No, I think he had 2012, had a break, then 2013 missed out, obviously. But you can't umpire in every grand final.
Yeah, but he got dropped. Got dropped.
Wow.
Mate, it's a selection process. He got dropped.
Okay, we still got 10, which is equals a record.
10 more than Mark Rennings, Will Schofield.
Absolutely.
That's correct. Meredith, Simon Meredith, he's a good umpire.
Yep.
Played under both those guys. I don't really remember Brendan Hoskins.
Because it's his first grand final,
but he must have been umpiring for a while. I saw the selection tape. Did you see this? They put it on social media. You might have seen it.
No, I didn't see it.
I thought you might have seen it, mate.
I'm selective with my choices.
So they did a big reveal and called the umpires, coaches called him up, and it was quite emotional.
It's great. It's good how they do that, isn't it, with players?
Oh, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Because people don't see that with umpires. Like, that's as much about what they're playing for or umpiring for
absolutely.
is players,
the
right?
recognition, the opportunity. Yep, absolutely.
How do you see this game going? I will, before I get your answer, I think this is a pretty incredible stat. I wrote an article for Code Sport. 9 Geelong Falcons playing in this game. So of the 44 players, 9 are from the same club. It'd be like Subiaco. Like Geelong Falcons is effectively Subiaco in Victoria. I don't know if that's ever happened before. Now, I haven't checked that off, but I would be surprised if 9 guys from the same junior development club played in the game. You've got the 2 McCartan brothers for Sydney, and then you've got Paddy Dangerfield, Tom Atkins, Gary Rowan, Brian Myers, Jed Buse, Tom Stewart, Jack Henry. 7 for Geelong, 2 for Sydney. The Mick Turner Footy Factory. That's
Mickey
the
Turner.
That's the
Number 9 for Geelong.
Yeah, that's it. So he's a team of the century wingman for Geelong, 250 gamer, captain of the footy club, and he ran the Geelong Falcons. So I think that's, me being a Geelong boy, it's a pretty incredible thing that'll, raise the standard of Geelong Falcons even more. They've had 15 premiership players, 3 Brownlow medalists, 2 Norm Smith medalists, 8 AFL captains. It's a bloody good program down there. So there'll be 9 of them playing in the game on the weekend.
No, you've spent 5.5 minutes talking about the Geelong Falcons. It's a very good point, though,
Scott.
Scott.
Do you want me to run through the fucking team lineups here? If you want the team lineups, fucking head down to the West Australian and have a read of the paper. You're here on the Shelter FootyCast. We give you real insight. What do you expect to happen, Mark Rennings? This will be good.
Go back to the last time they met, and it was one of those bizarre nights of footy in the history.
Is this Buddy's 1,000th?
Buddy's 1,000th. They win by 30 points. Geelong kicked really poorly at goal. And I don't know, how much do you look at that? I mean, that's going back a fair while now. They only met early in the season, to be honest. It was
round 2.
It was round 2, actually, yeah. Well,
I lost $100 because of this.
Dare I say, it was my father's funeral that day, and I remember sitting there watching the game and getting nicely whacked, and it was it was a bizarre game because the buddy factor was so prominent.
Yes.
And it was, it was... Look, with Sydney, what we've seen, that their second half last week, I think they'll have a look at, what they did wrong, what they did right. As you said, they won the game, so that's important. I just can't see how they're going to penetrate the Geelong defence, and also I just love the Geelong attack when they're going. I mean, Cameron has had one good final, I think you could say, really good. I mean, hasn't had to produce his absolute best during the finals. Tommy Hawkins been inaccurate last weekend against Brisbane. Stengel, they've got 3 All-Australians
in their forward line.
That's not a bad head start.
Yep.
It is about, we know the midfield's going to be important, but for you, is there anything to draw from what you see about Sydney and how they play back in round 2 and how they go about it, or the SCG's a different beast?
No, nothing. Like, honestly, nothing. If it doesn't matter if it's Sydney or whoever, you don't look that far back. They may look at a couple of little things, but Geelong will be playing so much differently right now than they did in round 2, and so will Sydney, for that matter. It would have been a different team, both sides. I don't think Joel Selwood played that day. Not that matters exceptionally much, but they'll be completely different teams. The way I think this game's going to go, it has to do with Geelong's lead up. So the last 4 rounds of the season, Geelong played, you're going to like this as well, Western Bulldogs, St Kilda, West Coast, Gold Coast.
Yeah, West Coast was last, yep.
Right, so that not in any order, but those 4 teams, right? Any of them good at defending? Gold Coast, St Kilda, West Coast, or the Bulldogs? No.
0.
Collingwood in the first qualifying final. A good attacking side, Collingwood. They don't defend. They attack. They attack you. So don't defend. They have a bye. They play Brisbane. May as well have been a bye. So they had the pre-finals bye, Collingwood. Bye, Brisbane. May as well have been a bye. And now they're in a grand final. So in 10 weeks, they have not played a defensive side. And Sydney lock down your best players. That's what Sydney do. Clark will go to Stewart. They'll have someone on Jeremy Cameron. You mentioned Jeremy Cameron. Now, I've played on Jeremy Cameron. I'm not saying I know how to beat him, but when I prepared to play on him, you need to be physical with him because he's a runner. He's a freestyler. Like, if you let him do his own thing, he is the best forward in the game. He's better than anyone.
Great tank.
Great tank. He can run. He can jump. He can mark. He can kick goals from anywhere. He's scary. But if you put body on him and you show him a shitload of respect and you're physical with him, like anyone, it's bloody hard to beat that because you're fighting against someone. You need someone who's going to scrap him all day long, to be honest. So it could be, we'll get to who that could be, but that's what Sydney will do. They'll 100% do that, and they'll get someone on Dangerfield in the middle of the ground. They'll put time into him, given what he did last week. You can't just let Dangerfield run around by himself. So they've got someone on Stewart, Dangerfield, Cameron. Someone will be matched up on Hawkins, clearly, but I think those are the three most important players to how Geelong plays, and Sydney will lock them all down. So that's how they'll have a chance of winning. Are they going to win? I still don't know. I still haven't made my mind up, but I think Geelong, coupled with Geelong's preparation, which is not playing anyone defensive in 10 weeks, as well as the fact that Sydney is exactly that team, I think it's going to make for a really interesting grand final that Sydney could definitely win.
Yeah, absolutely. What I like about Geelong is their intercept marking is such a hallmark for them. Yeah. They tend to drop the ruckman behind the play, and it can become just a wall to get past.
That's what happened against Brisbane.
Against Brisbane, yeah. They did that really well. Now, whether Sydney can alter that strategy remains to be seen. As you said, being able to have Stewart as that player to intercept, and you think they'll make a point of...
Ryan Clark will go to him. I'm almost undoubtedly that'll happen.
Yep.
He's done that in the past. He's done it on other forwards. He does it really well, and then he gets a bit dangerous as well. That's the important thing about being a forward tagger is, okay, stop your man, but you can't run around on a backman all day. You need to be dangerous and get them into positions that they're uncomfortable with, that it's difficult to drop off or intercept from. And if they do and they get it wrong, it might be standing at the top of the goal square, for instance, or wherever it is. So Sydney did a little bit to Darcy Moore last week until they moved him on to Lance Franklin. So I reckon you called it. That, remember, he wasn't in the game, Darcy Moore. We hadn't called his name. And either you or Carl said maybe he's getting taken away from the game. And I think they were. They'll take him to the fat side of the ground.
Was it Logan McDonald? He was playing for some stage. And
remember, Logan McDonald hadn't touched it either.
No, and Maynard was getting a bit of treatment from Buddy. And at that stage, you thought, why don't they get their best defender on him? And he was taking overhead marks, etc. But, yeah, look, I think you make a good point. You've spelled it out pretty well. I do think that Sydney's clearance work, looking at the numbers, hasn't been as good as what they would like.
Yep.
And Geelong's efficiency going inside 50 is a little better, but it shapes up to being, hopefully, I mean, as we know, they've won, 15 in a row, Geelong heading into this,
yep,
and 9 in a row for Sydney heading into this.
Yep.
That's not bad form.
Yeah. I mean, you're right about the backlines. I think the backlines will have, which I'm bloody happy about, they'll have a big influence on this game because it'll be about Geelong's intercepting backline, but can Sydney's backline stop this all-Australian forward line? I think they can. The McCartan brothers, one of them will get Hawkins, one of them will get Cameron, probably. Tom McCartan's got the better tank out of the two of them.
Who goes to Rowan?
That's a very good point.
Because he's got that. He's that.
Dane Rampy potentially, but maybe not.
But Rampy can play.
Yeah,
he can play on a beast as well, can't he?
I think with Rowan, you've got to put someone who can play a bit taller because he is a run and jumper, and if you can be a bit physical and
stop his run at it.
Yeah, you can't let him. A lot of these players, mate, if they're let to do what they want to do, which is run around and showcase their skills, of course they're great players. They're all Australian players. But if you can. The challenge is, can you stop that from happening? And everyone's been trying to do it all year and they haven't been able to do it. So can Sydney do it? Well, I think if you look back to that game in round 2, even though I said don't look at that at all, I think the Sydney backline, from memory, the McCartan brothers had very good games at intercepting Geelong's entries. So, of course, the midfield will dictate it. The midfield matchups are pretty interesting with Dangerfield in there. Parker's probably the leader in there for Sydney, but you've got Heaney that runs through there. Callum Mills has been a two-way runner. sort of an interesting player that goes in and out of there. Chad Warner, West Australian boy, he's an incredible year.
What a great season he's had. I mean, he got homesick and he was, but he always looked like a ready-made player when he arrived at Sydney. Such a composed player, and he's been. No wonder they want to get his brother into the mix as soon as possible. So,
what's his brother's name?
Is it Corey?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, another C Warner. Yes, Tom Hickey in the ruck. I think that's a really special story. Oh yeah. So I spoke to Tom earlier this week. Wanted to get a big chat with him before it gets into it, and just spoke about what the week looked like, and he was like, "Look, mate, I've got 3 kids, twins, which you know about, Skeeter." He said, "Mate, this week does not change one little bit. I might get one night to myself in the hotel, but the lead up to the week, no sleep." He's right in the thick of things. A couple of 1-year-old twins, mate. Like
good on him.
I spoke to him. He did the interview with one of the twins on his chest asleep. Like, and it's just a normal week for him. But of course,
it's an extraordinary week. It could be the best week of his life.
Yeah, exactly. That's
in terms of football.
That's the advice. He said, "Well, you got any advice for me?" I said, look, having played in a losing and a winning one, my memories of the winning one are greater, and of course winning it's never everything, but accept the week, enjoy the week, but be there to win it. Like, you're there now. Don't just think, how good we've made it, yay for us. Like, you want to bloody win it. You're there now. Like, make sure you fucking win it.
Very big chance.
It might be terrible advice, but
yeah, well, no, but it is. I mean, this is. Fair chance this will be his last chance.
Well, yeah, everyone, who plays in one, it could be their last go. So, like, no one ever said to me in 2015 when we lost, like, make sure you go to win. And it might sound stupid, but there was a lot of chat about, it's a great week, enjoy the parade. When you get out on the ground, have a look at everything, which is all true. Of course it is. But if you don't win the game, it can be almost a tainted memory that it makes you feel sick. I wish I had done this, wish I had done that. So, yeah, it sounds funny, but no one ever said that to me before 15. So I wish someone had said, "Look, it's all great, but if you don't win it,
you may as well just
you may as well have lost the prelim."
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, seriously. So we'll be. I've got a lot of fingers and a lot of pies in this game. Geelong boy, watched them as a kid. Know a lot of the guys personally. Got Tom Hickey and a couple of Geelong boys in the Sydney game. Before we get to who's going to win it and some Norm Smith predictions, a couple of injury clouds. Max Holmes, I said Monday he's not playing the granny. I'm still standing by that, but apparently he's a chance.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I mean, if you're any doubt, and you can't say he's not going to be some doubt coming tomorrow night at selection.
Yeah.
Look, I'd say for me, I'd say he's probably a 30% chance to play, but maybe we're both just missing the obvious here. I think Sam Reid is even less likely.
Yeah.
I mean, they're saying that if he does get an injection, there's a real chance that he could tear the abductor off the bone, which
doesn't sound ideal.
No, I don't know what that means, but it doesn't sound good.
Well, the abductor is the inside muscle that runs all the way up to you know what. So tearing that off probably not.
But if you've got a premiership with that, is that going to make it worth it?
Yeah, probably. I mean, walking's usually a pretty important part of life as well. So we'll see how he goes. McInerney apparently didn't train, but he had an ankle knock. So that's how you recover from an ankle. You don't go and run it on the Tuesday. You'll be training by Thursday. So we could go relatively unchanged, maybe one change each. Who are we going to do first? Norm Smith or who wins?
Well, I think who wins, and then we work out who's
winning and by how much.
Going to stick with the best team for the season, for the year. I think Geelong, they're a bit like a Melbourne Cup where you see a trainer has just got them primed, albeit with, as you said, maybe not the hardest leading with defensive sides or lack of them to contend with. I just think Chris Scott he's given Dangerfield with a bit of soreness some time off. He's rested Selwood. I think last year's prelim final, they were humiliated, albeit there was some sickness. I think this is their moment. I really do. I think Danger is, this is his match that he can shine. I think the Cats will win. I think they'll win by, what's the line about? -10. So I'm going to take them on the line. There you go, just to put it in punting parlance.
Well, if we're using horse racing, and not that I know anything about it, I truly am just no idea about it.
Yeah,
I feel like it's been a great preparation, and the horse is raring to go, but it's about to be checked out of the when it jumps and it's going to get checked early, and it's whether or not it can recover and come back around the outside of the pack, whether it can win or not. And some horses will be able to do it.
You're talking about Sydney or
and
Geelong
some,
here?
And some don't. It's a really long-winded analogy for Sydney checking Geelong out of the box, physical early, locking down their best players. Can Geelong weather the storm? And I think they'll have to come from behind or they'll have to win the game. They won't be trying to hold a lead. I think they'll have to, in the second half, have to go and win the game.
A bit like the Geelong Collingwood qualifying final then.
Yep. Yeah, I do think so. And yeah, it'll be really physical, at least for the first half. And, can Sydney maintain that? We saw Collingwood a bit of a fade out. Can they maintain it? I'm going to say I think they can, and I think Sydney win an upset under a goal. I think it'll be within, 5 points, and Sydney win.
Well, if Sydney win, I'm with you. I don't think there's going to be a big margin. I think Geelong's a really good starting team. They've shown it all season. So, look, if you're right and they can just stymie them early, perhaps. But if you're saying that, and I think it's going to be Geelong by 2 or 3 goals.
Yep.
But every time you say it's going to be a close grand final, it never turns out that way.
I hope it is.
So do I. But last year felt like a close grand final. The margin was 70 points in there, wasn't it?
I think it was something like that.
It was something stupid. So, yeah, anyway.
Norm Smith?
Well, I've just given it away a little bit. But if Geelong's winning, I just think he is the bloke that has been playing his whole career for this moment.
Yep.
Number 35 for Geelong.
Okay. I've been really struggling for Norm Smith for Sydney because I think Mills locks down Dangerfield, but you don't win a Norm Smith locking someone down. They lock down Stewart. Geelong player doesn't win I've landed on Luke Parker. I think Luke Parker could be the one that
He's a gun.
Maybe runs around on, maybe a Cam Guthrie or a Duncan, who are both great players, but not those really accountable players. And I think if Sydney wins it, Parker kicks a couple of goals out of the midfield and wins a Norm Smith.
Gee, it'd be a good game either way, we're hoping, aren't we? Just fingers crossed. Look, I'm looking forward to walking back into the MCG for the first time since 19. What about you? You looking forward to doing that as well?
Don't push my buttons. You're bloody pushing my buttons today. It's fucking pissing me off. I have one last stat to give you before we get into PTI. Of the last 8 grand finals, 6 of those games, the first goal-kicking club has gone on to lose the game. So it's actually the last 2 years, the winner has kicked the first goal, but the 6 before that, all losing teams. So Shuey in 15, Parker in 16, Jeremy Cameron for GWS in 17, Varco in 18. So all losing after kicking the first goal. So who kicks the first goal, and do they lose the game?
You're big on omens and doing little sort of.
Only one of us here have played in AFL grand final. So
are we bringing that out of the cupboard? Are we? Oh, okay.
You've been pushing my buttons all bloody show, and you know what? You got me. Yeah, you got me. I'm pissed off. Who's kicking the first goal?
Oh, you want me to nominate who's kicking the first goal?
Yep.
Oh well,
I think
given what you just said,
I think you think Jeremy Cameron's kicking the first goal because you love him.
Yeah, I do love him.
Yeah.
But then that doesn't work in my favour because then Sydney wins the GF under your scenario. No, I think Papley kicks the first goal.
Very good. And Sydney lose?
Yes.
Very good. Love that.
Nothing against Sydney, but you won't be upset if the Cats win.
That's your grand final preview. Will Schofield, Mark Reading, Shelter FootyCast. A little bit of PTI to finish off the show today. I've got a couple of good ones. This is one at the back end that you spoke about earlier on, but we go with this one first. Saturday's winner in the grand final will decide who is the most consistently successful team over the past 10 years. Yes or no?
Between the two clubs or in the AFL? Hang on, I just need to get some clarification here.
AFL.
I think Geelong.
Keyword consistently.
Yeah, I think Geelong has been the most consistent.
They've only missed one year of finals.
Yeah, and we're talking prelim finals on grand final. 2020.
So what if they lose the grand final and Sydney win?
Well, you're saying Saturday's winner will decide. So if they win it, absolutely.
Does Sydney become the? Because you're saying Geelong's been the side. What if Sydney wins the flag? Does that change things?
Possibly, but I still think Geelong's consistency of effort to get to a position where they're in challenging mode still gives them a good argument on that front.
To go against you, I think Sydney both these clubs, you can't really mount an argument against Geelong, but for Sydney, it astounds me that this Bloods culture, which has been spoken about since 2005, the West Coast Sydney series, 05, 06, and then all the games in between, they talked about the Bloods culture. They still speak about that, which is pretty incredible. That's almost 20 years, and that's been pulled out of, I'm pretty sure, South
Is it myth or reality, do you think?
I think it's the reality. The guys that I know that have played there, so Nick Smith, I went to school with him. He was a very good player for Sydney. Tom Hickey now there. Dean Cox is there. I know a few guys, and they speak. I've heard the Bloods culture. I've heard it mentioned. So it's real. It's something that it's not something probably you or I ever understand. But I think it's about the way they handle themselves, almost a bit like the All Blacks. Just a culture thing.
Don't you just break it down? It's a no dickhead policy, isn't it? In essence.
Well, yeah, maybe, but like, I think they've actually held true to it. Is probably my point.
Yeah,
a lot of other clubs haven't. There's been a lot of success over a lot of other clubs, but they always fall in and out of culture. Sydney's just seems has been consistent in that.
And what astounds me about that is that they come from obviously not an AFL heartland, so the scrutiny in Sydney isn't like in Melbourne or Perth or South Australia, where there's, if you're a team that's going no good, there's a lot of heat on you. They probably don't get that same.
Tom Hickey mentioned it. He said, like, I could probably just go down to the cafe. Not that he feels like he's a big celebrity or anything, but it's grand final week. And if a West Coast player in a grand final week in Perth went down to a cafe, they'd probably get mobbed. Whereas he was like, no one would even know I am.
Which he probably loves.
Oh, absolutely loves it. He'll go and live in the hinterland in the Gold Coast when he's done. He'll be up there growing veggies and eating green living. Yeah, correct. Last one. This is a good one, I think. The issues at Hawthorn, Brisbane and North Melbourne, so this is to do with the allegations this morning, are going to significantly impact the expected trades this trade period. So if we talk about, like you were saying, Logue, Tucker to North, Dunkley to Brisbane, and Hawthorn related stuff. I can't really think of any off the top of my head with Hawthorn.
You know what? I'm going to let you have first throw at the stumps, and I'm happy to go because it's easy to take the first line of thinking.
I will say, if you want to go to North Melbourne, yes, there'll be some money being thrown around. You can't imagine too many guys are on big money at North Melbourne at the moment. But a big reason that would help get you over the line would be Alistair Clarkson. And so from what I said off the top of the show, that I find it hard, given what's been said and put out there, that those guys will be coaching. Same with Fagan at Brisbane. I think it may impact trade period. Yeah, if you're a player and you want to go and play for Alistair Clarkson, Brad Hill's been thrown around there a little bit, and he's great relationship with Alistair Clarkson. If he's no longer there, he doesn't want to go to North Melbourne. Absolutely not. Griffin Logue's been promised to be played as a defender and make him an All-Australian defender. That's what I've heard. Clarkson said, I'll put you in a position, make you an All-Australian defender within 3 years. Clarkson's not there. Do you want to do that? Or do you want to stay with, obviously, a really hard decision that it's been publicised that Logue's found it really difficult to leave Fremantle? Does Tucker want to go there? Does anyone want to go there? I think Clarkson's had a lot to do with North Melbourne's popularity or whatever you want to call it. And Dunkley to Brisbane, don't know where that'll sit. I think North Melbourne stuff, though, will be impacted.
Yeah, I can mount an argument to this because I think you're right. Clarkson has been the magnet to get those players there, but by the same token, I don't think it's going to be resolved before they have to commit. So I think in their hearts, they've probably been told, look, let's hope he's still there. Sometimes when you've checked out of a club mentally, I think that will be the case with these guys. That if they've already committed, this is a left field, curveball that no one would have ever anticipated. So, but no, I tend to think that because of the time this may take, that the players will commit, they'll go, and obviously there has to be a plan B from a North Melbourne point of view, and obviously from Brisbane as well. But no, I'm prepared to say that won't significantly change purely because of the time frame. I just don't think there's...
The trades will have to happen no one will know the answer.
Yeah, no, exactly. No one will know the answer. So I tend to think they will still commit to the clubs that they have already said, yep, I'm I'm on my way.
When you're on the plane for the grand final, mate, you're flying business, I assume?
I'm not flying business, but travelling Sport Australia, just getting us across there tomorrow morning.
That's very
7:30,
nice.
yeah. Yes.
Do a good job down there at Travelling Sports Australia.
Great job, Paul Rams in the team. So you're going to get across there. So Thursday night, very quiet night. Just
Any functions?
No functions that I'm aware of, but we'll find something. But I'm not sure exactly what time we're going to get to bed Western Standard Time, because of course I keep my clock on Perth time. So if I'm getting a bit at 2 o'clock Perth time, I've had a fairly decent hit out over there. So
We'd like some updates across Shoulder FootyCast, please, Scoot.
I'd like some updates from you from the Gold Coast as well, because that's, for me, I'm jealous. I actually am jealous because I love the Gold Coast.
Not
this weekend. Not this weekend.
Give me groomsmen at the wedding. Very good. Follow us on Shoulder FootyCast across Instagram. Send us an email at footycast@shoulderbrewing.com.au. Watch us on YouTube. Listen to us on podcast. Grand final will be done and dusted next time we speak to you. Go Swans.
Tanners.